There's growing research which is raising safety questions about popular weight loss drugs, in particular semaglutide. The brand names are Ozempic and Wegovy. The study published last week reported on whether those who take semaglutide are more likely to report having suicidal thoughts. It continues a tug of war over scientific evidence about the risks associated with these medications. Dr. Norman Swan, co-host of the Health Report and What's That Rash, has more.
It's largely dominated by two companies, Novo Nordisk, which produces Ozempic and Wegovy, the semaglutide drugs, and Eli Lilly, which produces Mounjaro, which is another drug. And the market last year was well over $30 billion. It's huge. And it's predicted to rise to $142 billion a year by 2030. Still dominated probably by these two companies, even though more drugs will come on the market. So there's a lot at stake.
Lots at stake, as you say. Let's talk about the latest survey then, this study. What did it look at and how many people were involved in it?
There have been reports, just to back off a little bit, when they do a randomised trial, just to see whether a drug works, a big trial might be a couple of thousand people, but if you've got a side effect that's 1 in 5,000 or 1 in 10,000, you're not going to pick it up in a randomised trial. You have to pick it up from observations after the drug's on the market. And globally, we are not good at all at monitoring new drugs once they're on the market. And it tends not to be done in a systematic way. And it's a particular issue here because you've got vast numbers of people, and that will increase as supplies increase, taking this drug where they've not got diabetes, they may not have obesity, they might just be a little bit overweight. And we don't fully understand the risks. So there have been reports over the last year or two of people developing suicidal thinking, suicidal ideation, as a result of taking, in association, I should say, rather than as a result, with taking these drugs. And it's come from various sources. The European Medicines Agency, the Food and Drug Administration of the United States, and the British have looked at this. The British haven't reported. The Europeans and the Americans say they haven't found convincing evidence yet that this is a problem, but they're keeping an eye on it. This new study goes much broader. It looks at a vast database of a lot of drugs, not just Ozempic, looking at adverse drug reactions. Something like 30 million reports overall, and I think about 30,000 reports relate to these drugs. And to see what was the incidence of suicidal thinking in these reports, and also checking against what it might be. So, for example, just having diabetes might increase your risk of suicidal thinking, or weight loss might do it. So they've compared these reports to weight loss drug, another weight loss drug, and also two anti-diabetes drugs. And what they found, there was a disproportionate number of reports of suicidal thinking with semaglutide and semaglutide. But it wasn't vast. It was 100 reports in 30,000 overall adverse drug reactions related to these drugs. Now, that could just be the tip of the iceberg. We don't know. But they looked further. And they found that it was disproportionate, particularly in people who were already on antidepressants. So what does this mean? Well, it could be that the drug interacts with antidepressants. It could be that people on antidepressants, it's just a signal that they've got depression and anxiety, which might interact with the drug. It could be no effect whatsoever. But we've got to get to the bottom of it because these drugs are going to be used more widely. Now, a lot of people's psychological well-being will be improved by these drugs because they've lost weight and they feel great. But if there's a significant subsegment who've got psychological problems, we need to know more about it, who they are, so that doctors can prescribe more carefully.
So does that mean that the regulators will review?
That's what the call is for. But we probably need much more systematic ways of reviewing these new medications because they will be used far more broadly. I mean, they have extraordinary effects on the heart, the kidney, possibly even the brain, which is why this is not necessarily a surprise, and the effects on the heart and the kidney are beneficial. So it could reduce the burden of chronic disease. So these are very interesting drugs, but you don't want people being psychologically harmed by them unnecessarily.
And if you or someone you know is experiencing distress, please contact Lifeline on 13 11 14. Or if you need information or support, you can contact Beyond Blue on 1300 22 46 36.